Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. We've got an interesting video today, the latest updates in the Dylan Rounds case provided by Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. Because just recent, which was yesterday if I'm correct in saying, shout out to H2O for letting me know about it in the live chat of last night's video. More about that later. And it was by East Idaho News Channel doing an interview with Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. We've not seen Justin for a bit, okay? Candice Cooley has done recent interviews with Doug, but it's good to see it from a different angle, perspective, different channel, because they may ask different questions. And today, we're going to go through the key points I've noted down to summarize what was talked about in this latest interview. I'll try and give my opinions, analysis, breakdown of them, try and reinforce certain points, and maybe see if there's any contradictions, any misinformation, any switching or changing from what we've previously heard. Also take in mind, feel free to share your thoughts, your opinions, reactions in the live chat as we do go along. If there's any points I have missed, any contradictions I've not notified, seen, feel free to give your own thoughts down below in the chat and also the comment section, okay? I don't know how many people are present right now, but we'll just do a brief little break into this video, just so people are ready and are able to watch at the same time. Also, what we're going to be doing today is taking a look at body language of Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds. We've not done one of them for some time, so that can return. Kind of brief, but we're still doing it. Also, we're going to take a look at the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page because there are links shared to do with these interviews, which also has the comment section. We can check what people have to say about it, see their thoughts, their opinions, if there's any information they have. And there's also another link to a different news program, so we'll try and take a look at that as well. So there seems to be a fair bit going on in a short burst, right? One of those things once again. What I do want to say is, in terms of shout outs, shout out to the newish people that have come along in recent time, such as last night. I noticed there was an influx in newer people appearing on the channel, whether it be permanent or temporarily. It's good of them to show up. In addition, shout out to Inky, also known as Tainted Ink or something, the bingo caller, the bingo baller, don't lose the balls, okay? With her super chat last night. Maria, God, that came out wrong. Maria, meow, okay, for hers last night. Weedleby and Indiana. So that's really good. We had blessings all around. It's like, wow, man. I mean, if we continued these blessings, it might get to a situation where it becomes a bit of a desert. I mean, there's no more water to be produced, right? But don't worry. Just call up Tyler. Hey, Tyler feller, do you have any spare liquid? It'll be fine. It'll be fine. The kitty cats in the chat will not dry up. It will be under control. You don't have to worry about that. And also just a brief little acknowledgement. If you're new to this channel, you can be dodgy if you need to be, okay? Also, if you haven't already, make sure to check out my previous video I did last night to do with Dylan Rounds and the discussion about seeds, the date and timing around it, a map analysis of potential key locations, and spreading awareness of the fake Christopher Lloyd account on YouTube. You need to be aware of that. If you've just heard of it for the first time and you're confused, the video last night will explain it all, okay? And the real Christopher Lloyd does appear in the chat as well. So if you check the live chat replay, because I do have it saved on all my videos, you can look back through the text log, okay? So it's all under control. A link will be provided down below in the pinned comment section. In addition, if you want to escape drama, if you need to clear or cleanse your mind, your memory of stuff, there is a light-hearted video in the comment section pinned as well. Make sure to check that one out, and it's to do with Bella V. Got some motivational update regarding her, so check that out after watching this video, okay? So I think with that all being said, I think we can transition on to this discussion and analysis of the latest updates to do with Dylan Rounds provided by Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds on the East Idaho News Channel YouTube, right? We've not seen one for several months on East Idaho News, and for most part of them, they've done it quite well. It's been structured, the questions have been good, and there's been updates which have been somewhat key throughout time. I found them to be useful. I was able to listen to them easily and analyse and understand them. It wasn't that bad. Now, there's positives and negatives you can take from this interview. I think what we'll do, summarise it very quickly on the spot in terms of the overall feeling. You can share your own thoughts in the chat yourself. We can do a poll as well right now. Do you feel somewhat underwhelmed by this East Idaho News Channel interview? Yes, no, a little, you don't know. Feel free to vote right now. What I will say is, after all these months of no updates, interviews on that channel by the family, you could say it was a waste of time. Like, what was the point of it? And I'm basing it under the condition if you never watched the interviews on No Thanks channel with Candice Cooley. If you never knew those existed, then watching this East Idaho News Channel interview, you'd be thinking, what the fuck? What was the point, right? Because in recent time, a fair few things talked about by Candice Cooley, although not groundbreaking, still interesting, whether it be to do with, I guess, Dylan and buying the farm, half and half with the grandfather, because I've never heard of that before in the past. It was made clear this time, as well as talking about the pond, of course, in January being dug up, drained again, you know, stuff like that, and some of the bits and bobs in between. And the possibility of, has a wallet been found? Her saying no, but her knowing that it hasn't been found is a bit questionable. All that stuff, that was not mentioned in the East Idaho News interview. So you'd be thinking, well, what was really talked about? And to be honest, if you weren't clearly listening, really nothing of interest was truly mentioned, okay? But I did absorb the information. And with the video being somewhat short, 15 minutes, it was fairly easy to follow and rewind back, right? As I was saying, the positives and negatives with these short interviews, it's straight to the point. There's no waffling, clear-cut, straightforward questions and answers. There you go. The negatives are you lack detail and you lack the length of further discussions opening up, right? Just how it is. But you've got both versions on YouTube, which can complement one another. If you don't like one, you got the other. There you go. So I think we should begin with this summary, this analysis. What I will say is, just in case you feel a bit deflated by what's been talked about just then, there was one fairly important new piece of update, which is quite interesting, and I will read it out once we get to it, okay? So make sure you're sticking around. So the first thing Candice Cooley said was, there's a lot of information we cannot release at this moment in time. Has she said that before in the past? Yes. So it's nothing extremely different, but considering what's been said on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page in recent time, there's a lot moving forward. We're going to hear about stuff shortly, or hopefully we should, and we should be able to release this in the near future and talk about that in the future, be interviews coming up. It's like, whoa, are we coming to some head? Gets to this point and it's like, we can't release the information. And it's like, oh, a little bit disappointed, right? A little bit underwhelming. What I will say is, I did manage to predict something once again. Some people that watch my channel regularly will know about me predicting things at times where this will happen, that will happen, both in the case and the community, how things are shaped, where things go. And previously, if we're referring back to like a couple of months ago when Candice Cooley started going quiet for the first time for a lengthy period, and she briefly touched upon there is things going on in the background, movement forwards now. I said that what will probably happen is Candice Cooley will do an informal interview on No Thanks channel, talk about a range of stuff that's going on, and then eventually do a formal interview on the East Idaho News channel. And that's the exact order it's gone in. So I've predicted that, which is interesting. Now, is there a reason to why Candice Cooley cannot release this information, as she said in this interview? She said, at this point, it would now jeopardize the case if it was public. So whilst people can say bullshit, is the information really that important? Well, it must be. The information must be important if it could harm the case if revealed public. What is it exactly? I don't know, but it's somewhat important. Next point. Candice Cooley said, whilst her and Justin have been in and out of Lucin, they've not been able to do much because of the weather, right? Obviously, recently we looked at the odd weather report, but it wasn't to do with Lucin. Mini-Me made that clear. I'm aware of that. But it was just giving an insight, a rough insight to the surrounding areas. And as described by Candice Cooley in this interview, it just reinforces it. The weather is problematic, right? Though, to be fair, Ty Corbin recently going to Lucin Pond, it didn't seem that bad. But then again, I'm just trying to make sense of it. You saw the snow spread over that way, but up close it was just brown dirt. Why has that not turned to snow, but the other areas have? Correct me if I'm wrong, but possibility that it snowed at a certain point and it's just been cold since. It's not snowed anymore, but the coldness has kept the snow remaining and not melting away. But the areas that don't have much snow is where it's been dug up. But that was back in January. So when's the provenance of Ty Corbin's video? Well, not the provenance, the origin of Ty Corbin's video. I will ask that question once again next time when we do the Lucin Pond analysis. But if anyone knows, does anyone know when Ty Corbin recorded the video, right? Okay, it may say uploaded like a week or two ago, but it don't mean to say that's when it was actually recorded, okay? So if anyone can clear that up, that'll be helpful because I'm just trying to understand the weather and why there's patches where there's no snow, where work was done, but a while ago, like a month ago. So it's like, did it not snow in between since? Maybe. But yeah, basically weather has been problematic, right? Candice Cooley also then went on, I think Ned Eaton asked a question to do with Brenner, the suspect. Candice Cooley saying Brenner still not been interviewed yet. But then I think Ned saying that because of being in custody, Brenner having, is it an attorney or someone that it could prevent interviews taking place. They'll say, you can't talk to my client, you can't talk to Brenner at this moment in time. I mean, that is a possibility. That might be why certain interviews haven't taken place. But I guess the only thing I can remember is that when Candice Cooley, and it was to do with the Heavy D interview, which was months ago now inside the grain shed, and they were talking about Brenner calling Justin and then calling the grandmother Karen, and Karen correcting Brenner on bits of information in the case. Brenner had enough and said, right, you can talk to my legal team from now on, you're not talking to me anymore. So you've seen that process. I'd still say that back then, because of the grandmother correcting Brenner, although it could have been the right thing to do, it was also probably not the best, because now you have isolated Brenner. You know, one of those things where you might not like someone because of what they've done, possibly, right? But you have to work with them, you have to cooperate with them, you have to try and be able to communicate, even if you don't want to, just so you can get an answer or maybe some possible information. But if you piss them off, they're only going to close themselves up even more and be less likely to talk. So it is problematic. I don't think it has helped through time. But the next little point, and we probably can bring it back up again later as for body language, but it wasn't that much because Justin didn't talk much. I know to some people, no surprise there. But Candice Cooley did kind of interrupt and jump in when Justin was trying to talk. Now, that may not be a new thing, but it kind of explains to why Justin doesn't talk that much, because Candice Cooley is doing most of it, right? There'll be numerous other reasons and factors behind that, and maybe we can get into that later, but that was just one little thing I picked up on, and I thought, well, just let Justin talk, okay? Doesn't always seem to be allowed, which is a bit odd. The next point, Candice Cooley tying in with the weather situation in Lucin, that Paramount weren't able to get out there to film a certain spot when Justin was out there with Paramount. Now, the way Candice Cooley worded that, it was as if Candice Cooley wasn't present, just Justin Rounds and the documentary crew. That's interesting, allowing Justin to do his own thing so he can communicate with this group and give his thoughts, because I know it feels like that's been ignored, or it's not been covered as much, just Justin and what he thinks. But because of weather, it wasn't possible. Now, I wonder where they were going to try and record something. Is it a place we know of? Is it to do with a wash? Is it to do with the grain shed? I don't know. Is it to do with the pond? It'll be somewhere where it's not accessible. And that's what I'm talking about. If they're talking about recent time, it's not been accessible getting into the place, then why was Ty Corbin able to get there? Do you see what I'm saying? Unless it was recorded at a different date, right? You got to take that into mind. Next point, and this is where the most important, I guess, bit of information, the most important update is talked about in this interview. Okay, so it's brief, but just listen in. Okay, Candice Cooley said there is more evidence found, but we as a family have no clue what it is. Okay. Fairly important, you know, throughout time, evidence has been found or been returned, right? And as time's gone on, it might have got to that point where it's like, how much more evidence can you truly find until you get to literally finding Dylan? You know what I'm saying? Just to confirm, they still have not found Dylan Rounds yet, but they have found some evidence. Who knows what it could be? Has it got anything to do with the pond? Some people have suggested it. There might be a comment on Ty Corbin's channel as well we need to look at later. But I'm just trying to understand this situation, this scenario. First of all, you got to try and question what could the item be? What could this evidence be? But then second of all is, hasn't it been denied? But this is the third point, maybe for a reason, as we've seen previous. So feel free to share your thoughts and opinions in the chat to what you think this could be about. We could try and do a poll right now, I guess. Let's do a poll. What do you think's been found? Dylan's wallet, a gun, which could have been used to take out Dylan, clothing, or something else? List it down below and feel free to vote right now, okay? What do I think it could be? Hard to say at this moment in time. Maybe if I do an analysis of Lucin Pond and just like look through it, look at the area, compare, contrast, and then try and come to a conclusion. But I've heard previously where Candice Cooley, when someone asked a question in Doug's live stream interview, has the wallet been found, or the wallet has been found, and Candice Cooley said, not at all. It's not been found. No. Where are you getting that from? It's not been found. Nope. Has she denied stuff like that before in the past? Possibly, yeah. Such as like the gun or the key fob at a time. But supposedly that was because she had no choice. The police slipped up, publicly released that information, and then Candice Cooley was advised to deny it and go against it, to make her a liar, but for the sake of helping the case, right? Has that happened again? I don't know. You can leave your thoughts down below. But I'm sure, yeah, this is the thing. Few interviews back in recent time when Candice Cooley did bring it up for the first time about the pond being dug up and maybe, I guess, drained in 2023, most recently, okay? Candice Cooley said nothing was found there, but it ticks it off the list. You know, double checking, making sure, being certain that there's nothing there, nothing's been missed. And yet just now we're hearing that new evidence has been found. And you could say, yeah, but what's it got to do with the pond? How could it even apply to the pond? Well, look at it like this. If Candice Cooley and Justin have said they've kind of been out there, but they've not been able to do much due to the weather, then not much has really taken place to be able to find anything. So you look back at the last known search where there was some kind of investigation, and that's the pond. And then what happened after that? This, hearing about evidence being found. So I think there's a possible link between the two, right? It does make you question if that really is the case, and I'm just basing it off if it is true, then why weren't Ellie able to find this stuff when they searched that pond way back in the past? Did they not try hard enough? Did something get added in between? That's what you got to ask yourself. And I'll probably bring up some of these key discussion points in the next video. So it might seem a bit repetitive down the line, but if things aren't answered now, there needs to be repetition to highlight and make bold key points such as this, and see if we can get to a bottom of an answer, okay? Anything else? So the next point mentioned, and to be honest, this could actually tie on with the whole disappointing, underwhelming feeling of the 17th of February, right? First of all, what was so significant about the 17th of February? The almost like the second weekish of February. It's when Candice Cooley said they were going to have an interview, a meet-up with Box Elder County, and they'll be told about things, and it should bring some kind of hope, some kind of closure to getting closer, more to do with getting closer to solving the case, right? So I guess some people were really waiting on the 17th, and then when the day came and Candice Cooley asked a question in response to it, she said, no, we've not really heard anything, no, not much has happened, no. And it's like, oh, right. But in this interview, the East Idaho News one, Candice Cooley, when answering Ned Eaton's question about, you know, what about the stuff you've been anticipating? Has it finally come forth? Candice Cooley's response was, not quite. It's gone slower than we've expected. There's been a lot of stalling of this anticipation, stalling of people out there. Is it anything new? Not really, because supposedly in the past, there's been mess-ups by the police, LE, things being delayed, things being dragged out, things being denied, cancelled, ignored, etc. So it's nothing too new. Maybe this time it's more to do with following a procedure. There's a level of importance and handling with care with such as the evidence and stuff going on in the background. Maybe they don't trust the family, or they don't feel it's quite time. You know, sometimes opinions, thoughts can change with him. So they might say, right, we're gonna set this up, but then in between maybe something else comes in of importance, change of heart, and they're like, well, actually no, we're probably best holding it back just to be safe. You never know. Do any of you feel that ever since the mess ups in the early days, do you think that the LE are being extra cautious now, trying not to slip up as much, or do you think they're just as incompetent as they were back then? Leave your thoughts down below. Justin Rounds did finally get a point, like a chance to talk and share his thoughts about the case and the feelings, what you get from it, like Ned asking, how are you doing, how are you coping, etc., you know, with it being like almost 9 months or so, slowly approaching a year. And Justin Rounds was like, it feels, you know, unreal, like I can't believe it's happening. And it got to a point where I don't know what's going on. Now that's interesting by Justin Rounds to say that, considering Candice Cooley has been all this and coming out with facts, statistics which have been lies, and we have documented it along the way. She has also come out with other information which has been interesting, but she seems to know a lot about the case, but she's not always right. Though with Justin Rounds, he doesn't seem to really know much at all, at least from how it was worded in this interview. He probably does know stuff going on, but if you was just to watch this interview, first time impressions, you'd think, oh, he seems a bit lost. He seems a bit confused, right? Not his fault, though, just how things have gone. He also said later, he trained himself not to get his hopes high. And that's normal as well, because if there's been disappointment, if there's been a bit of a letdown within the case, you think something's going to happen, something positive, then it's negative. and it happens over and over again, you end up adapting. So that's what Justin has done. That's probably why he sounds kind of calm and relaxed, even though he's probably not. He's just trying to keep to a monotone level. Because if you start getting excited or worked up, it's all for nothing from the way it's gone, from the looks of it, right? So I understand that. Is there anything else? The next point that was mentioned, and it was like Ned Eaton bringing up about YouTube, the platform, telling Candice Cooley, asking her, has there been any more recent trouble or is it eased off since? Candice Cooley did laugh a little and say, no, it's still there. The YouTubers are out there still covering Dylan's name and still giving false statements and false information and causing trouble. And also the PI in the early days that really harmed the case. That's how she worded it, not me. Okay. But look, this is the thing. Whilst, yes, there might be YouTubers out there covering the Dylan Rounds case or harming it in some way or spreading purposely misinformation or purposely creating misinformation, just remember Candice Cooley has done it herself about the stat 500% sale boost in Montello when they're actually not doing as well as how Candice Cooley has worded it. Okay, with the bar being shut for over 3 months now, money going backwards, going downhill, people from the area reporting on it because they're there to see it. And then also Candice Cooley saying there's no conviction rate in Montello or Lucin, Utah for inappropriate behaviour towards younger people, those type of people. And yet Smooth Fishing was able to find a statistic saying Box Elder County or so, 167 convictions of people doing that inappropriate stuff. And as well, me covering Montello and the reports there of the likes of Scott Wadsworth and what he's done. Troy Wadsworth's done some things as well in the past. And then some people that were not, well, from Montello, but did crimes elsewhere. You get the idea, okay? It goes on and on. Candice Cooley line. So, whilst it's okay to call other people out, if you call yourself out at the same time, then that's okay. If you don't, then a little bit hypocritical, right? We've got to acknowledge that. We've got to maintain that balance, okay? It might receive resistance, but I'm just saying how it is from an observational perspective, okay? Because I'm seeing it here, I'm seeing it happening there, right? It just needs to be done. Moving on to the next point made, Ned Eaton asked a question, is there any more important things you need to address, clear up any misinformation, misunderstandings? And Candice Cooley was saying how, you know, like the claims made about the family being accused of this and that, the family being accused of causing harm to the case, that news articles out there or something like that, media, almost like reposting those type of statements and wording it in their own ways. And Candice Cooley heavily disagrees with that, and Justin too, because Justin agreed himself in the interview. They don't feel like they've caused harm to the case, right? I feel like there'll probably be a fair few people that might disagree with that. I mean, my opinion is the family or some of the family members have impacted the case negatively in the early days, but unintentionally. That's how I would word it. And if people are wondering how, why? Well, first of all, I think it was Justin breaking into Dylan's truck. If it's like a scene of a crime, you shouldn't be touching things, right? Why break into the truck when you can clearly see inside that Dylan isn't there? There's no need to break into it, right? Obviously, it might be unusual that the door's locked because he normally doesn't do that, but it just doesn't help breaking in because it could contaminate evidence, DNA, fingerprints, you never know, right? And then the next one, which was harmed, and it was a very important piece of data, right? And that's to do with whether it be Candice, whether it be Justin, whether it be the friend, whoever it was that drove Dylan's truck away. Because they got like a thumbs up by the police. I think that's what their excuse was. The police said we could move it, so we did. But we found out later that it impacted the, like, do you call it a black box? The data that was already like recorded on the vehicle of previous distance, the last 100 miles, but once they started driving on, it reset, so you lost all that data from before. So if they never touched that vehicle of Dylan's, if the family never drove it, then you would have been able to check the mileage and the distance and where it could have previously been used, and that would have been a lot easier and a lot more efficient, right? Don't you think? So they kind of have harmed the case in a way. It just depends how ultimately important it is. So like breaking into the truck wasn't the best thing to do, but it wasn't the end of the world. Though by using the vehicle and then losing the data, if those 100 miles were used by the last known individual, the suspect, then you could literally go to that point. If you can actually check the location and GPS, whatever, do that 100 miles, get to that point and then start searching, and maybe the chances of finding Dylan is higher, maybe. I'm not saying for definite, but there's a higher chance. But that's not possible, right? There could still be a positive outcome, of course, yes. So then once it gets to that point, then you would look back and say, they didn't ultimately negatively harm the case, but they made it more difficult for themselves in the long run, or they made it more longer stretch, trying to make sense of it all. But once again, you can't just blame the family, or you can't just do a witch hunt on them. They're not all to blame. They're not entirely responsible. You look at others in between, whether it be people way externally out there, or the police at times. So you got to balance it out, okay? Next, final few points. Candice Cooley once again bringing it back up. Ned Eaton asking the question, what happens next? So if you're like thinking ahead, if you get the justice, what happens after that? And then Candice Cooley said, well, it's time for, like, I guess, spreading awareness. But I think she didn't exactly say it, but her facial expression, she started laughing. It was almost like, yeah, oh yeah, and we're going to be coming for you after that. Not Ned, but towards maybe other people out there that may have caused trouble or are in Candice Cooley's bad books. You know what I'm saying? That's like how I interpreted it. That sudden facial change, that sudden expression. It's like, whoa, it's a bit dark. But the other talk was about Dylan's legacy. I think that might what coincides with the whole spreading awareness of what not to do and what to do, how to spread awareness, how to do this, how to do that, and who to avoid and who to report, and using current experience of what's gone wrong here, possibly. What else did she say? Candice Cooley said about raising money for drones. Why do you want to raise money for drones? She didn't quite fully explain what it was exactly going to be used for, whether it be Dylan Round's search or for other searches out there of other people. I'm not quite sure. Because why would Candice Cooley need another drone when Heavy D operated one on site, when Mob Crew Chris operated one on site at a different point in time, and when EquiSearch with Chris had their own drone? Because it was Duty Ron that supposedly raised money in the first place for a drone from his channel. Then it was passed on to EquiSearch. Then EquiSearch came along with the drone, or Candice Cooley was given the drone, and then EquiSearch came along and then collected the drone and then started using it. And it's like, well, those drones, what we've previously seen, the full spectral drones, what happened to them? Were they just given away? Why weren't they, hold on to? Why do you need to now raise for more drones? I don't quite understand that. If it's for other missing people out there and other families that need that equipment but don't have access to it, then I can understand that, but that's not how it was explained. So, you know, make of it how you will, okay? The only other point Candice Cooley mentioned was about Candice Cooley, they were only able to bring EquiSearch out to Lucin around October time. It kind of makes sense. I'm just trying to think, when did we hear about the big push? Well, it was like November, wasn't it? October, November, not too far apart. That can explain to why it took so long for it to eventually happen, when these groups, these resources could have been used in the early days. But from the looks of it, Box Elder County, the Ellie supposedly didn't allow that to happen. There was like a blocker, so nothing could be done. I don't know if you fully agree with that, but that's what was said. Maybe there's a possibility that Box Elder were being awkward at the time. They didn't like the idea of other resources being used when they're not in control of it, maybe. So they wanted to take back control. I don't know. But obviously with time, they quietened off, backed off, and then it was allowed, okay? So that might explain possibly to you why certain resources weren't used earlier on, okay? So with that being said, that interview, as I said, it was short, but let's do a quick body language analysis. Who should we start with first? Let's just briefly start with Justin Rounds, right? Although he doesn't really say much in most of the interviews because Candice Cooley is doing all the talking, I would say that in comparison to the last interview I watched of Justin, I'm not talking about the Duty Run one, I'm talking about the one before that, okay? The reason why I say that is because I didn't really watch the Duty Run one, and also I'm doing it as a comparison when in the presence of Candice Cooley, okay? Candice Cooley wasn't present in the Duty Run interview with Justin. It was just Justin, okay? So with that being said, the last one I watched was with Heavy D in the grain shed with Justin and Candice Cooley. Last time Justin appeared with Candice Cooley in an interview. But now it's happened once again. And this time round, in comparison, I'd say Justin was quieter this time compared to back then. He didn't talk as much. It could also be because the video was short and there wasn't as many questions directed at him. Understandably, yeah. But he just seemed quieter. In terms of his tone of voice, the deepness of it, the pace of it, that's not really changed. Facial expressions, not really changed. The leg movement, the leg twitching, whatever that is, that's not changed, okay? Not too much. I'd say though, he did sound, sometimes when he talked, he sounded a little bit more sad, a bit more saddened, okay? And of course, that's normal, once again, but I'm just talking about what's changed compared to what I last heard. He just seemed a little bit more drained, seemed a little bit more hopeless, but he did say there was hope. I'm just trying to infer from his voice, his tone. Let me know what you think down below as well. Do you agree that Justin seemed a little bit more lost this time? A little bit more reserved, quieter than when he is normally quiet? Let me know. His hands were clasped together like that once again, okay? With his hands being clasped like that, holding something back. Holding emotions, holding frustration, holding oneself together, possibly. Is it he's holding himself from maybe releasing information he's not supposed to? I don't know. I mean, let's just look at it like this. Kind of off subject, but tying in with this. If you look back, there's been times where Candice Cooley has spoke out and said this and said that when maybe she wasn't supposed to, but in her defense, she had no choice because no action was being taken back then with LE and information being processed or covered, so she did it herself. But has Justin ever spoken out and spread misinformation? He might have spoken out here and there and called some people out, as we know, like Don Haley and his gay son and the family meet at the main line. Let's sort this out. Dead men walking. That was mentioned at one point. The post was deleted afterwards. Kind of makes sense. Like how Doug from No Thanks has done videos here and there and live streams and he's deleted them afterwards for certain reasons as well. And it's happened in the past as well. Anything else? No, that's the thing. Whereas Candice Cooley has spoken out and may have released information she wasn't supposed to, Justin Rounds hasn't really done that. So you could argue that because they are separate as well, because they are divorced, do you think there's a very small chance that Justin Rounds knows more about the case than Candice Cooley does? That the police has cooperated more with Justin than Candice Cooley? What do you think? Do a little poll of that right now. Who do you think's been cooperating more with? Or is it just the same. They both are in the dark. They're both confused. What I would say is, a couple of months ago during that Silence, The Spell by Candice Cooley, where it's gone quiet, but she said there's things going on in the background. Justin, he never posted anything then. He never like released anything more. So if he knew of anything back then, he was able to hold it back, which is good, right? And yeah, I'm just putting these like little observations. Now, let's move on to Candice Cooley, okay? She didn't seem upset. I know people will say, well, she wasn't like that to begin with in the early days. But if you was just looking at it right now, only this footage, you think, oh, she isn't upset whatsoever. But you take in mind that it's like 8-9 months on, there'd be a level of acceptance and coming to terms of things. Not 100%, but, you know, processing it all, settling in, understanding where you're at, the situation and the outcome, likely. So, yeah. She was talking, though, in a calm voice. She didn't have a warble to her voice this time. She didn't pause as much when she was talking, trying to control herself. It just seemed, it was a formal interview, but a casual, relaxed talk. Kind of like what you've seen on No Thanks, just without the laughter, because it's a more formal situation. It's kind of, to some people, maybe it's kind of weird to see. But because I'm aware of how long it's gone on for, you know, you probably still would be upset, but maybe not as upset as you were in the early stages, right? That's all I'm saying, okay? Anything else? As I said, she did overspeak Justin when he was talking. It wasn't like extreme or extensive, but it did happen at times, and that could possibly reinforce to why Justin doesn't always get the chance to talk at times. Let me just play you a very small clip now just to explain my observation.
It's just been this roller coaster of this is going to happen in 2 weeks, and 2 months later it hasn't happened. And so when we're told that, we don't know how to take it because none of it's been true.
We talk a lot about just trying not to get our hopes up too much.
Yeah, because
nothing ever hardly seems like anything comes out of anything.
Yeah, it's almost like we're given a grain of salt.
So you saw that. Let me know your thoughts. The next and final thing to add on, body language by Candice Cooley. She seemed relaxed. Her head movement wasn't as erratic this time. Her eye contact was more stable. She didn't seem to blink as excessively. As for Justin, Justin remained eye contact on Candice Cooley when she was talking, but that's normal. If you look at someone when they're talking in a conversation, it's kind of polite and normal, I guess. But a few people picked up on it, right? It might have applied to the past, but it's also been brought up once again. I didn't really focus on it, okay, but other people did, so we might as well just cover it anyway. Candice Cooley getting her nails done, making her nails look all pretty and fancy on camera in the interview. That's what people were saying. People saying, oh, why is Candice Cooley improving her appearance in an interview? Shouldn't she care more about her son? But the only thing I'll say, okay, you've seen it with many cases, many interviews, whether it be to do with a case, whether it be to do with a crime, a bit of news, or just simply appearing on a show as a guest. They all tend to wear makeup, maybe more the females than the males, but they have something applied to the faces or, you know, extra things done. What about the nails though? I don't know if the nails apply, but, you know, I'm sure you would pick up on it, like with TV shows, talk shows, interviews, guests, whatever it may be. Serious or not, formal, informal, to do with a serious crime, a saddening case, a saddening moment, or just a casual conversation. And they might have like tan applied, some kind of tan, and sometimes males have that as well. Maybe lipstick as well, but I don't know about the nails, if they were custom or whatever. I mean, like, I'm just trying to understand it, why people think it's a big issue. I think people think it's a big issue because they feel that Candice Cooley is spending more self-care on herself than Dylan Round's case. I'm not saying that, but that's what could be what others are saying, okay? But yeah, I mean, I think we would have popped up an image on the screen by now so you could see the nails, but I wouldn't say it's anything groundbreaking, you know? What I would say, if you had a situation where there was a bad event, someone's gone missing, someone's been killed, let's say, and then suddenly you see the family or friends, whoever, walking around with new clothes, a new car, or designer gear or something, you might think, oh, you know, during an event like this, where did you get that? How did you buy this and buy that? Why would you buy this and that when you're not in the correct frame of mind? Like, what are you doing? And it's like, that's a bit more suspicious. Where did that money come from? Was there something dodgy going in the background? But when it comes to getting nails done, it's not exactly groundbreaking, right? I mean, people may not agree with this, but there's a possibility that maybe Candice Cooley did something simple as that, an adjustment to, such as with the nails, to feel a little bit more normal, right? To do some kind of like task, some kind of routine, what was done in the past, as you would, because you wanted to, because you enjoyed it, you found it fun. But maybe that activity has been lost with time because of the whole case of Dylan. So you've lost a part of you throughout time. So you try and incorporate it back to feel a bit more normal, to get away from the pain and suffering. That's possible. Does that apply to nails? There's some kind of activity, right? Maybe it can apply to other things as well, but I'm just trying to think of an explanation on the spot to counter certain points made, right? So, as I said, you can share your thoughts and opinions to what you think of this interview. If I did miss anything out, feel free to list it down below. We're not finished yet, because what we need to do now is go on the Find Dylan Round's Facebook page and see the latest post there with Dylan. So here we are, Facebook page, and the first one that shows up, 21 hours ago by Candice Cooley, a link to East Idaho News. I don't know if that's directly to the YouTube one, not from the looks of it, eastidahonews.com. So it's happened in the past. We don't need to look at it, but just in case there's any confusion at any point, you know, on YouTube, you get these news channels like East Idaho News, ABC4 News Utah, Fox 13 News. They did the videos, but then they provide an article on their own websites, but in text format, and quoting the people as you read along. That can be useful if you're analysing word for word, if the interview is somewhat long, right? Instead of having to play the clip, pause it, analyse, play the clip, pause it, analyse, and get copyright. You get what I'm saying? So this link most likely is the transcript of the video, what we've analysed earlier, okay? And the same applies to the other news article, which we'll take a look at very shortly. But I will have to play a clip or a portion of it, only because it doesn't allow me to go on the website due to being outside of the US. Okay, so it's a little bit messy, but let's just check the comments out of this East Idaho News Channel interview, what took place. What do people have to say? Why has it sent me all the way back up here, you bastard? Right, there we go. Terry Watson, my prayers for Dylan's parents and family. Okay, sending prayers. We'll skip through some of these because we don't really need to read them. Teresa, wow, once again, I am struck by your presence and strength and poise, Candice. I think all of you. Okay. Right. Cindy, J. James, glad things are progressing. I pray for you to get Dylan. Okay. Jazz Girlson sent a direct link. Don't know why she sent two lots of links when it's the same. I don't understand. Charlene Eldridge says, I just keep the prayers going. Yeah. What's this one? Vermont, I could help with seeds if that's one of the states you haven't figured out yet. Okay, that's to do with the Dylan's legacy. What's this one? Lisa Ferguson. When you get the seeds delivered to the states where you'll be posting, you can contact in each state. I live in far western Kentucky, 30 miles from southeastern Missouri. Okay. Yeah. Not too many people giving their opinions, right? Jennifer Lynn, they should be embarrassed about how they've handled the investigation. My heart breaks. That's to with the Ellie. Deborah Torre, you're in my thoughts. Okay. I think it's the other article we need to take a look at where the comments are more interesting, but I don't want to miss anything, so that's why we're just briefly glancing through this. Christy says, this news guy is great. I believe in good. Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds made the sun shine bright on Dylan's legacy. I believe in good. Do you mean to say I believe in God? I don't know what they're quite saying now. Rebecca, Jennifer, continue prayers. Right, okay. Close cousin of mine went missing for 3 days in July 2000. He was found, but it wasn't an ending we wanted. It breaks my heart to see someone else go for it. Yeah. Jim, Yegi, Candice and Justin, please know my prayers. Yeah. Is that it? Wow. So this is the next one. Jazz Grolson. There's the link. Takes you to the website. I've clicked on it and it won't allow access. You will be able to view it yourself if you're from the US. But what I can do is play a small portion of the clip, summarised, at what it's about. And you might be wondering, well, what else is talked about? Well, let me just give you a very brief backstory. This other news article, which is ABC4 News Utah, okay, is about 1 minute and 1 second long. It's a very short video. It's literally just saying that there is hope. There is the family's optimistic for the coming time of what could happen in the Dylan Rounds case. So it's even shorter than the East Idaho News Channel. But, just wait. There's one piece of language or one sentence used which causes a little bit of confusion, and you'll see it popping up in the comments section, possibly. Maybe this one. Actually, where has it gone? Anyway, let me play you the video now.
And the parents of a missing Lucin man say they are optimistic about a break in the case coming soon. 20-year-old Dylan Rounds disappeared over Memorial Day weekend from his farm in Box Elder County. Since then, police have named 2 suspects. Police say they both interacted with Rounds in the days before he was last heard from and have unrelated charges for gun crimes in Utah. That being said, neither have been charged in Rounds' case. His parents say they are more confident in authorities now that the FBI is involved.
So you just heard what was said, and I will give you my opinion in a second, okay? But let's just check these comments out first to see what other people thought about it. Louisa Jacquish Demarost says, is the second suspect new information? I have not heard anyone say that other than this lady. Renee Stout says, I feel we will see the truth due to the diligence of the family and the prayers of everyone. Ava Tyndall says his family needs justice. This has gone on far too long. A sound beating would make him talk the truth. Okay. Not too much suspicion, but this person, Louisa, thinks, this has never been talked about before. But this is where maybe people start questioning themselves and getting confused. Let me give you my explanation right now. Right, so hopefully everyone is listening right now and in the chat. You can also share your thoughts and opinions to what you think about that clip that was just shown then on that news channel. But let me just share with you my thoughts. So what tends to happen is those type of news channels, especially ABC4 News Utah and maybe Fox 13, is they copy and paste certain statements which have been said in the past and use it again to almost tell the story of how things have happened from start to middle to maybe finish, okay? But because they keep bringing it up from the past but maybe wording it with newer information, it kind of gets blurred lines and confusing to the point where it seems as if they're saying something new is happening now, when it's something that was mentioned way back in the past and it may have been cleared up with time. Does that make sense to you? Hence why you saw that comment on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page of someone saying, what? I've never heard of this before. I'm so confused. Is this new information? What I will say is, Candice Cooley, at least in that East Idaho News Channel, mentioned nothing about any other suspect out there, person of interest, right? In recent time, Candice Cooley has stated on a few occasions now in no thanks interviews that it's only Brenner responsible. There's absolutely no other evidence that points to anyone else, that Chase Venstra is innocent, plays no role whatsoever. That's summarised to what Candice Cooley has said in recent time, okay? But does she ultimately know that's the truth? You could argue that, but there's another alternative point we could add on, but we won't get into that yet because I need to give a brief backstory to that news clip, just to set the record straight. So, the way it was worded, it said, 2 people of interest, not even mentioning the actual names. And it's like, you'd hear something like that at the beginning of an investigation or case, right? There's a person of interest, a suspect. We won't mention the person's name yet, maybe for privacy reasons, or maybe because we just simply don't have the full news report. It's been, 7-8 months on? You can reveal the names. That's what other people have done. That's what YouTube channels have done. So why aren't they giving the actual names? I don't know why they're being vague there. That sounds a bit odd. But it's all one recorded clip. It's not like edited little bits from the past. It's all relevant to now. So that's a little bit dodgy. But who are the people of interest, the suspects? The 2 suspects the police have looked into. Brenner, James Brenner, also known as Jim Brenner, and Chase Venstra. And you might think, well, that conflicts with what Candice Cooley has said in recent time, saying that he's innocent, and as well with that alibi of Venstra being elsewhere on the day. But this news report said that Chase Venstra is a suspect. But what we also have heard with time is that Chase Venstra was never a suspect by the police. The police were looking into him, but not to do with the Dylan Brown's case. So you're hearing it all over the place. He is, he isn't, this person is, this person isn't. It's like, what is going on? I think the best way of trying to understand it would be, at a certain point in the past, both Brenner and Chase Venstra were people of interest associated with Dylan's disappearance because they both knew Dylan and were both in the presence of Dylan in a short space of time, hence why it was mentioned in that little news clip, because Brenner may have confronted Dylan on the day Dylan went missing, Dylan being at the grain shed, and that's where Brenner squats, so they would have seen each other possibly and maybe interacted. As for Chase Venstra, the 25th, a few days beforehand, when he got picked up by Dylan, described as the crazy man, when passed on to Candice Cooley, that conversation between Dylan and Candice prior to that. So that just reinforces who they're actually talking about. But because of that vagueness, you're left guessing. If they just mentioned the names, then it might not seem as confusing to people. People could still think, oh, wait, are they now reassociating Chase with the case? Yes, no, I'm confused. But it wouldn't be the levels and the layers on top of it by saying, but who's this suspect? Who's this person of interest? We've never heard of him before, right? But there's clues within that news report, that short one. So when they mentioned about they were in the presence of Dylan, well, Brenner was, as we know. And Chase Venstra definitely was because of the 25th, right? Meeting up with Dylan somewhat in the presence of him. And then the bit about the done on gun charges, though they've not been charged with the Dylan's disappearance, Dylan's murder. Well, who's got gun charges? Brenner, hence why Brenner is in jail to begin with, Weber County Jail, okay? But who else? Chase Venstra. Chase Venstra has also been done for gun charges as well. So that's what that news report is about, saying that Brenner and Chase Venstra are suspects in the Dylan Rounds case, but arguably outdated information considering the way this case has gone and the way it's been shaped with time and explained that Chase Venstra is not a suspect anymore, nor was he to begin with, okay? Brenner is the sole lone one responsible, okay? It's just the way that news article worded it. It gets a bit messy. But let me give you my alternative theory. Don't go too deep with it, okay? So to avoid confusion, we have seen Candice Cooley deny things before, strongly, and then it turned out to be true. But it was done to prevent the case from being harmed negatively, right? Such as like with the key fob, Candice Cooley denying it, turned out it was true that it was returned back, but she had to deny it to keep the case alive and stable. And as for this recent information going on in the background, which Candice Cooley doesn't know what's going on, such as evidence found, and if she does know anything, she can't release it because it'll jeopardise the case, right? That sort of stuff. So if you get people left, right and centre, whether it be news programmes or for most part of it, just YouTubers and people online saying, is Chase Venstra responsible? Is he? Is he? Is he? Well, if it's for the sake of preventing the case from being jeopardised, you most likely are going to say he plays no role. He's innocent. He's not guilty. He's a good person. He's got nothing to do with it. You say that to kind of push people away, to maybe, not ruin the case, ruin the investigation going on, right? If you can do it with evidence and deny it, then maybe you can do it with people as well who are supposedly responsible. One way of looking at it. But you just fast forward. Candice Cooley, the way that news report was, saying how they remain hopeful and optimistic more now with the LE, the police, because of the recent involvement by the FBI. Or it was worded more as because of the FBI recently stepping on in. They've not just recently stepped on in. They were there in the early days as well, the FBI. So I feel, for most part of it, the way ABC4 News Utah worded what they did about the current situation with Dylan Rounds is they've incorporated some of the latest footage of Candice Cooley in an East Idaho News Channel interview. And they've used it with old information to do with the early days of seeing Chase Venstra and Brenner as both potential suspects. I just feel like the news channels wouldn't know more information than Candice Cooley would. Am I wrong in saying that? Because if these news channels can just say all this and all that, which is the truth, and yet Candice Cooley hasn't mentioned it, maybe because she doesn't want to jeopardise the case, then it seems inevitable that the case is now completely ruined because information has been released which wasn't supposed to. I think it's more wording it in a way, either because they're confused and incompetent themselves, this news channel, they don't know what they're talking about, or they want to put a slant on it for their own benefits, for their own, gain of popularity or intrigue or interest, twisting the words slightly, adding one bit of info with another. One's outdated, the other one's relevant, but piecing them together so it both sounds like it connects with one another. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, at what point when I was looking at that clip, which made me think, oh my God, they're thinking of more than one person responsible? Oh my God, I've never heard of that before. I have heard of it before, because in the past, that's what the discussion was, that there was more than one person responsible for Dylan's disappearance. And, even to this day, there's still discussions about that, though Candice Cooley in recent time has really cleared that aside and said only Brenner is involved. But could she be saying that because the other or others that are involved have not been arrested yet, so she's got to deny it so it doesn't harm the case? Maybe that's the alternative way of looking at it. And if that wasn't the case, then it's this news channel just doing a poor job of coverage. What I will say is this is not the first time. Now, I don't know if it was ABC4 News Utah last time or it was Fox 13 News, but they combined differing interviews of Candice Cooley and statements made by her, which after watching it, it made me think, oh my God, Candice Cooley is contradicting herself. Absolutely, absolute mess. What is Candice Cooley doing? Why is she lying? Why? And on an exaggerated scale. And you would have seen me react like that in that past video. I can't find it on the spot now, but some of you will know what I'm talking about. It was that footage of that flyby over as we were narrating over it. Then it showed a bit of footage by Mark Ortiz. Then it showed a bit by Candice Cooley in a home doing an interview with the news programme. But it was old footage, and then they used a bit of new footage, then a bit of an old footage. And it was out of order. It wasn't in the correct order. Like the bit where it was saying that we've looked around and there's absolutely nothing you can find. And then next thing you know, they say they have found something. And then it's like, why are you lying? But it's because of relevancy. The way it was put together, it was as if it was all happening at that time. But no, it was separate. It was spread apart. Back then, they may have not found anything. But then later, they did find something. But if you put it both together, it's like, well, you're contradicting yourself at the same moment, but it's because it's two separate events. But this news article have pieced it together as one to try and cause confusion. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. I don't know if I can summarise it anymore. All I'll say is that this news article has caused a bit of disruption and a little bit of confusion, okay? And although Brenna has not been fully charged with Dylan's disappearance, and Chase Venstra has not been fully charged with Dylan's disappearance, the way it's been worded, with time, Chase Venstra never was involved in the investigation to begin with. Unless that's changed itself, that statement made by Candice Cooley in the past, I've not heard it change since. So, you can leave your thoughts down below, additional points if necessary. I would say, talking on the outside, there's a possibility that there might have been another person involved that disposed of Dylan, maybe assisted Brenna. Candice Cooley disagrees with that, but maybe she's doing it for legal reasons because of the case itself, possibly. But I just think that the news coverage article, whether they know whether they know themselves that they know something Candice Cooley doesn't know. I think they're just guessing, just hinting, and thought they'll use old footage and then pair it with new footage to make it sound like it's all relevant right now. The only example I can share with you on the spot is if you had footage of someone and they're just talking normal, but then if you edited it, so you cut little words out. So instead of saying, oh, today it's going to be a good day, I am here, I am happy, I'm ready, I'm ready to start. And then if someone cut it down and then rearranged some of the words and cut some of the letters out, it could be transferred as, I am gay. And then that other person's like, I never said that. You just pieced this with that and merged it together to make it seem like it is something when it's not. Does that make sense to you? That's kind of what this news channel has done, okay? So, I don't know if it will be addressed. I don't know if Candice Cooley has seen this or responded. Is there a way around it? Possibly. We'll just see what happens next, of course. I think we'll leave it there because we don't get too deep. I was going to do a separate video to that little news article bit, but I thought I might as well just incorporate it all in one. It was only a 1 minute piece. It wouldn't have been worth doing it as a separate video because it's that short. So leave your thoughts down below to what you think. If you've got any additional questions, any thoughts, let me know if you're confused by that little news article, that 1 minute one, and I'll try and explain it again if necessary. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found it somewhat of interest. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night for now.